The year itself was hard and we struggled and we didn't have a lot of food, we had no money. So those things would imply that it's not the best days of my life. But the best days of my life was because of the women that got involved, especially my wife. She went away speaking at different venues. She went with Skinner, the MP, and the nurses coming out and down in Cardiff when we down there, they clapping us into the fields and all that. And the community itself was fantastic.
The miners' strike was an experience that I wouldn't have missed for the world, because on a personal level, apart from anything else, it was a real learning curve. I can't believe how naive I was about the world and everything in it before that. My husband was a miner all of his life, from 14 years of age, and he worked in the Glennon North most of his life, but we did at one period move up to Yorkshire to the mines, because it was a scheme with the coal board whether they wanted miners to move up there. We were up there 14 years and we came back in 1969. And he became compensation secretary because he was a strong union man. Came compensations. Well, when the strike started, we had letters asking the women to go to a meeting, actually, first of all in the memo, because they made that the strike centre, and asked us to go around pushing leaflets through the door, requesting donations and support, and then go back in a couple of days and collect whatever people were willing to give. But that didn't last, because people actually did come to the memo themselves. Being in the centre of the village, it was very convenient.
I was born in this village that I still live in, Blanclecau. Born there in 1950. My father was a miner and my mother was a stay-at-home wife. And when I was 5, my father got killed in the colliery. So we went back to live with my grandparents for a while. And then she remarried a couple of years later. And I've now got 6 brothers and sisters. And we all live in the village. I've been married twice. My first husband was a miner, and my second husband worked on the surface in Martin Colliery, and that's how I got involved in the strike.
When I was at college, a picture editor came down from London. He said, you should go up and show some picture editors your work. So I'd photographed the pits before the strike. I got to know quite a few miners. And so I went to London and showed my portfolio. A couple of the newspapers I left my business card, and they said they'd get back to me, and I just thought, well, I don't know if they will. There's one newspaper that I won't mention the name. The guy, picture editor, told me to piss off. It was a right-wing newspaper. I was quite naive in those days. Shouldn't have gone there, but there we are. Yeah, and a couple of weeks later, the picture editor phoned up from The Guardian, I think it was, or The Observer. We'd like to use some of your pictures, and can you go out and shoot some more pictures? So if you go on picket lines or photograph anything of interest, we'd really like to use them. So that's how it really started, with me working for national newspapers. And then as the strike progressed, the pictures were used pretty much across the world. So, and I remember I was working 17 hours a day, more or less, because what I tried to do was take the pictures and then go back and process the films and make prints if I had time. Sometimes I didn't. I sent rolls of film off to London because of the deadlines, really, for the newspaper, and I never got to see that. But I saw the picture being published in the paper, but I never got to see the full set of eggs, and I never got those back. So I regret that, but you know, being a young photographer, and my dream was, after the photography course, was to work for national newspapers. These prints are digital prints, and they were scanned and printed by the Martin Parr Foundation, which I'm very grateful for. They're fantastic prints. I tend to shoot a lot digital now. I don't shoot film, which is quite sad. So I used to love processing films, and you know, you see the negs for the first time coming out of the wash, and you unroll the spiral of film and just look at them and think, maybe I got one or two good pictures here. And that was always the buzz for me. But with digital, it's a lot quicker, the process. The miners' strike was a really busy year for me as a photographer. I think I was pretty much out every day shooting pictures of picket lines, soup kitchens, demonstrations, all sorts of events going on. Yeah, the picket lines were with the working miners going in the scabs. The police didn't really want me photographing there, and I remember being on some picket lines and I was the only photographer there, but I was being tipped off by the miners, the NUM, the union, and to where to go. And the police used to sort of block secondary picketing. They used to block the roads and you know, press people or media people coming in. And I used to walk across the mountains. You know, I knew the area in the South Wales Valleys quite well. So I used to start off about 1 o'clock in the morning in the pitch black and just walk over the mountain, freezing cold, so it was winter. And my hands were pretty much numb when I got to the picket line. It's tricky to press the button, really.
I became active in the strike, picketed in different parts of the country. I went to Orgrave, and I was one of the drivers. When we had a roll call towards the end of the day, one of the boys was missing. So I went to the police officer and asked, where do you take boys that's been arrested? And he told me in Rotherham. So I'd never been to Rotherham before, so I was lost. And I was wandered around the back of this huge police station. And when I was there, a single-decker bus pulled up and the door was open. And when I looked, the seats had been removed and there was all little cages inside, and the bus was full of men that were in these cages. Some were unconscious, they'd wet themselves. There was blood running down the aisle through head injuries. The driver was shouting abuse at me, but he couldn't shut the door. There was something wrong with the door, and he kept on blowing the horn to open the electric gates of the police station. I was dumbfounded. It's something like you see in South Africa.
I remember going to Orgrave. It was a really warm day. I went up with some miners from South Wales. We were wearing shorts, t-shirts, and I think it was a June summer's day. And we went up to Orgrave, and the police, funnily enough, were really friendly when we got there. And they said, "Oh boys, yeah, this is where you park." I remember going into this field and thinking, this is quite strange, because it was like going into a football or rugby stadium, because the TV cameras were all set up on tripods, and then the miners were sort of congregating in this field, and on the side I could see press photographers, and I thought, I'm going to get some good pictures today, because I'm actually in with the crowd, and you know, could get some really nice close pictures and really atmospheric. And then things started to change, and I could hear police horses. I could see a lot of dust, a lot of noise, a hell of a lot of noise, shouting and trampling the police horses. So everyone started to run. I ran as well, and I ran running away from whatever was coming to us, which were police horses and then police with truncheons and shields and so on. And I think I tripped over, I think it was a railway line, and I don't know if I banged my head, but I got up and ran, and then the next thing I knew, I was in this sort of alleyway, and a guy saying to me, "Are you okay?" And then after that, everything was well, I've forgotten it, but I can't remember anything after that. And the next thing I could remember vaguely was ending up in a railway station. I think it was Rotherham. And I tried to get my head around things and tried to sort of think, what am I doing here? How do I get back home? Worst day of my life by far. It was horrendous. I'm returning to Orgreave in South Yorkshire with two former Welsh miners who were also at what is known as the Battle of Orgreave in 1984. The village of Orgreave was renamed and is now known as Waverley. The area has changed a lot. The coking plant is long gone, replaced by a new housing estate. It's a strange feeling being back here after 40 years. On that dreadful day 40 years ago, I later realised the two films I had shot must have fallen out of my bag when I was running and fell on the railway line. The only day in my 40+ year career that I came away with nothing. This is a former site of the Penrhyn Colliery in the Cynon Valley, and it's changed a lot now, 40 years on. I first came here, well, during the miners' strike. I was photographing some children just up on the houses there. I could see some guys just down by the railway tracks. The railway tracks were full of coal, miners were on strike, and the coal couldn't move because I think there was blockades along the railway line, so they couldn't move the coal trucks. So these guys were just pinching some coal, so I thought it'd be great to go down and take some pictures. I didn't know if they were going to be too happy about being photographed, but I thought, well, give it a try. So I walked down from the houses and just onto the railway sidings, which are here, or would have been here, and approached them. I said, "Boys, do you mind if I take some pictures of you?" And one of them was a bit offish, to say the least. There was a few F words, but the other guys seemed okay. And one guy said, "Well, if we can take a picture of you, then you can take photos of us." And I just thought, what do I do? So reluctantly, I gave him the camera, and I grouped up with them. And I thought, they're going to hold me here. He's either going to run with the camera or just smash it. I was pretty convinced, and I thought I was going to have a hide-in, to be honest, because there was no one else around. So he took my picture with the group, and they went, "Oh, all right, you know, take pictures of us." And the one guy sort of came around then, and he said, "Yeah, don't show my face." And I said, "Okay, that's fine." And the other guys didn't mind at all, and they were actually sort of enjoying it and posing for the camera. But yeah, it was a good experience, and I got some good pictures from it. Sian James was a miner's wife and later became a Labour Member of Parliament. During the strike, she welcomed lesbian and gays support the miners to the Dillais Valley.
So we were three valleys, 9 food centres, and we fed over 1,000 miners a week. Each person would get, each family would get the same amount. Now, there were other things like odds, what we called odds. Maybe people had been, you know, maybe you'd have 25 tins of baked beans, isn't it? You know, you wouldn't have enough to put in everybody's. But everybody got to choose things from the odds table, and the single men got to choose extras as well, because obviously they didn't have any money. They weren't entitled to any trade union payments, industrial dispute payments. I'll never forget our number with the, as was then, the DSS. We were DHSS, we were then, and our number that I had to write on top of every form that I filled in was TD 126, Trades Dispute 126. So I had to write that on top of the claim form, and I could claim money for me and the children, but nothing for the minor of the family, because he wasn't entitled to anything. Obviously we shared our food with Martin and things, but it was quite, and my payment every week was £10 a week.
The support we had, especially local support, was unbelievable. Unbelievable. All around the valleys. It was outstanding. The women's support group started up. They were tremendous, tremendous support they give us. We're collecting for food, collecting money. My wife got involved. She used to collect in the street for food and that. It was unbelievable.
What I didn't understand is she called us the enemy within, and that really made me angry, because what we were doing was fighting for our children. When she lost her own son in the desert, she sent an army out to look for them. Why did she think our feelings for our children were any the less than hers? And that made me really angry. I thought she got a heart of stone. And when I saw that photograph of her outside Downing Street in the car, and you could actually see she was crying, I thought, good enough for you, missus.
We weren't out on strike for money. We were on strike for our jobs and for the security of our children.
Well, I say to you, without fear of contradiction, that you have not got in the leadership on this platform 3 leaders or members of the NEC who will finish up in the House of Lords. But what you have got are leaders determined to take this union side by side with you to the most fantastic historic victory in history. Miners, I salute you. You're magnificent. Together.
When they came in the kitchen and told us it was all over, none of us could understand why or how. We hadn't got any inkling that it was going to happen. Yesterday was the same as every other day, and then all of a sudden today was different. And I never spoke to a woman that was involved inside or outside the kitchen that didn't cry on that day. They thought that we should have gone on, and as far as we was concerned, we would have continued. But it didn't seem to hurt the men in the same way as it hurt the women. I don't know why. I don't understand why.
I remember in 1995, it was a cold, I think March morning, around about 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning, and the miners were marching back to work. They've been on strike for a year, and they were marching back to work with the local brass band playing, with their lodge banner, and with their family, wives and partners marching with them. It was a very proud moment, and I was lucky enough to witness it and photograph it. The year-long strike was pretty bad. You know, I was photographing it, and I saw things, you know, the way the police reacted to striking miners. Yeah, it was a difficult time for them. But time I'll never forget. But walking up here now, nearly 40 years ago now, it's strange to imagine. It feels like yesterday. For me, photographing, I remember my hands being freezing cold, and but the adrenaline sort of overtook the fact that my fingers were pretty much blue, I think. Mardy was not the same place once the colliery had closed. There was a promise that the former pit site would be redeveloped, but this never happened.
Yeah, she lives down there, you know. Yeah. Away for Australia, that's nice in a few weeks. Lovely. No, I just put some hangers there now.
Have you used those?
Are you ladies from Mardy?
Yes. Yes.
You lived here all your lives?
Yes.
And how do you think it's changed since?
Well, everything's closing without us knowing half the time, so it's getting like a dead end at the moment. So we're fighting now for the surgery to make sure that keeps open.
Can you remember the pit closing? And
Yes, I marched with them.
Yes, we
We've done the march.
do you think there's been a big difference to the village since
Yes.
the
Oh,
pit
yes.
closed?
Definitely. Well, there's no work, is there, for a lot of them, and you have to travel. This is the old road up to Mardy Colliery. It hasn't been used since the colliery closed. I think the colliery closed in 1990 when the last miners finished there. Mardy was linked to Tower Colliery in the end, I think after the miners' strike. So they were both linked underground. Tower Colliery is just over the hill in the Hurn Valley, which is the next valley from the Rhondda Valley. It's quite sad to see now that the colliery is gone, and once miners used to come up here to do their shift, so it's quite a busy road. But now we just got walkers and cyclists coming up. The valley has become, I suppose, a lot greener. The old coal tips are pretty much disappearing with nature taking over. But of course, the jobs at collieries, the employment that they had was a lot, to say the least. So all that's gone, which has been detrimental, I think, to communities like Mardy. People have to find work outside or just move away. So it is quite sad. Mardy was the last pit to close in the Rhondda Valleys, bringing an end to a long tradition of coal mining.
And if the strike hadn't happened, perhaps it'd still be open, I don't know. But it was government policy at the time, so that is very debatable. But there was sufficient reserves of coal in Mardy to keep it going. There was talk there was coal there for 100 years. That was in the 70s. If there was, I don't know.
There didn't seem to be a fanfare about it. There was nothing, it just closed. As a lot of people went up and did programmes, and but it just closed, and it wasn't that many years after that we fought for it. But then we weren't the first to close after the strike, so others had closed, but it was just, the whole thing by then was, and it just disappeared, didn't just close, disappeared. You drive up Aberdeen Mountain to go over the top, and all of a sudden there was nothing there. And my grandkids now don't even know there was a colliery there. Well, it's much greener. There's lots of trees now that we keep cutting down. Unemployment, as you know, no industry up here. Most people that do work have to come out. Same as me, I had to come out to Cardiff. so most people not to come out. I've got no love for Scargill now. We'd have probably followed him to the ends of the earth then, but I got no love for the man now. I think he, filled his own pocket. And I think Scargill lost us the strike because there was no negotiation with him. It was black and white, and it was personal. It was a personal issue, him and Thatcher. She was out to destroy us, and in the end, he destroyed us as well.
After working for national newspapers and magazines throughout the strike, as a freelance photographer, my work began to become less regular. I was commissioned by Photo Gallery in Cardiff to take part in the Valleys project. I decided to document the aftermath of the strike on communities. I also wanted to capture the pit landscapes on film before they were demolished. I enjoyed the freedom of spending hours in a darkroom making archival exhibition prints. I'm returning to Photo Gallery in Cardiff to look at my photographs of the Valleys project. The images are kept in an archive along with other photographers commissioned to make work for the project. I met archive project officer Chloe Davis, who showed me my collection of images that I have not seen for nearly 40 years.
Engage with the community? Did you know them? Was it more of a...
Yeah, I did. I think with photography like this, you really do need to be part of the community, to be trusted, really. And I found that very important. So during the strike, I spent a lot of time in Mardi, where this picture was taken, and the families got to know me.
When you were photographing the children, were you going out with them on the days out? Or was it more of a, you knew they were going to be there and you were then going to photograph them knowing that they were going to be in those spaces?
They used to say where they played a lot. So in the holidays when they were off school, there were certain places where they go and play.
Yeah.
Derelict buildings was a good place. There's a reservoir up in Mardi where this was taken. And they played up there quite a lot as well.
Yeah. And I was just looking at these, and you can see you're in the houses there, but it looks like you're on the train.
Yeah, this one's on the train. This is actually during the miners' strike.
Oh, is it? Oh, they were going to the location.
And I forgot Photo Gallery had these, but it was the sort of pre-Valleys project exhibition, I think, from what I remember, this is 40 years ago. But they were going on the train. They'd been arrested in London for collecting money on the street, and they didn't have a permit to do it. It's a miner's wife.
Yeah.
She sat next to a businessman who didn't look very impressed.
Oh, so they weren't...
they weren't together.
Oh, okay.
So this is the miner's wife who'd been arrested for illegally collecting money. And they were going to appear in Marylebone Court, the magistrate's court.
Yeah.
But the judge actually let them off, so they were lucky. But she was laughing because of the businessman. There's this, juxtaposition against the young miner's wife and the businessman. Do you get many people looking at this archive?
Yeah, recently it's a new role that I've been kind of given, but I've been looking at, trying to reorganise it and really looking at the Valley project because it's such a big body of work that I would say gains the most interest with people wanting to look at the archive. It's this body of work they always kind of want to look at. And I guess it's because it's still relevant today. It's still, I guess a lot of it is university students who are doing photography, maybe want to learn about Wales, documentary photography in Wales, and I think this is a big body of work that people kind of refer back to and go back to. you know, you see these kids playing in like these like derelict kind of buildings. You just think, oh yeah, that's kind of really captures the essence of back then. But even now, I would say, like when I look at the Valleys project and these works, it really kind of, I can't even put the word to it, but it's just like, oh yeah, this is it, you know?
I didn't think 40 plus years on, that we'd still be looking at pictures like this. You
it's
know,
still relevant today, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
And like having the documentation of it just kind of keeps it alive.
Yeah.
So like protests like this, you don't really get anything like that anymore, do you? No, not around here.
No, because
cares enough.
Yeah, I mean,
do it.
at the time, if the National Union of Miners couldn't win against the government, no one else could, because they were the strongest union by far. You know, Thatcher and the Conservatives were so adamant on closing these pits, there was no way that the miners were going to win, really. Looking at the images was heartbreaking, as I was a witness to the destruction of the coal industry in the South Wales valleys. Not only were the pits closing, the welfare halls in many cases, where the miners paid subsidies from their wages to build and run the miners' welfare halls, were closing. A sense of community was slowly dying. Tower Colliery in the Hurn Valley was the last deep coal mine in South Wales. It was earmarked to close, but the miners successfully bought it. They had a buyout and they purchased their own colliery. So I went there in 1996. I spent pretty much a year there, a couple of days a month photographing, and I used a Fuji 6x9 camera, so there was 8 shots on a roll of 120. Because I didn't want to lose any quality, I used Kodak Tri-X film, and I actually rated it at 400 ISO, which was the recommended setting for it. I decided to go underground, and you weren't allowed to take any battery packs of any kind, photography packs. So flash guns were out, light meters were out. So on a Fuji 6x9, there wasn't a light meter. So I sort of educatedly guessed the exposure, but it was pretty accurate, luckily. And I used my cap lamp on my helmet to actually paint light. So when I photographed miners on the coal face, for example, the exposure time was maybe 10 seconds, 15 seconds long. So I'd ask the miners to stay absolutely still, and then I would paint light onto them and expose the image. And it worked quite well. The images we used for quite a few exhibitions, and the negs were really nice and sharp and good quality. They weren't grainy. And also a book was published called Owned by the Miners Tower, which was very, very successful. So yeah, it all worked out really well. I also set up a mobile studio in the lamp room. So when the miners came off shift from underground, I'd ask them can I take your portrait? And they all said yes. And I had a canvas backdrop, which was really quite dirty. So it was lovely. It really sort of gave the impression of the coal industry, which was very dirty. So the backdrop worked very well, and I used Bowen's flash as well. And the photos again were taken on a Fuji 6x9, wide angle lens, fixed wide angle lens. So they worked out good, and they're in the book as well.
Oh, young Mr. Tiley. And the Tower Colliery book. I remember all the photographs he took at Tower. Obviously I didn't go down the mines with him. I met Roger in 1989, so I didn't really know him when he photographed the miners and the miners' strike of 1984-85. Obviously since I met him, I helped him out really with a lot of his projects after the time I met him. You know, we've been to America, we've been all over. I've supported him and travelled with him, taken his images. We've been to America quite a few times actually. So, you know, it's really enjoyable and interesting because it's like meeting people and seeing how communities differ and are similar to Wales. Oh, this is Roger's Uncle Bill, Bill Thorpe. He worked in Beddoes Colliery in a pit for 32 years. Retired miner, I remember Uncle Bill. He passed away though not long after I met him, but and a favourite project of mine was the 30 Years Ago project. Coming from an art background myself, I particularly liked the concept of him taking portraits that he took in the 1980s of miners and rephotographing them, those images in the context of where they were originally taken. I really enjoyed that project. The reason I enjoyed that project because it sort of crossed over the boundaries between documentary photography and it sort of lent itself to the realms of art. You know, I do admire the purity of documentary photography and I admire Roger for his work. But this particular project had a romanticism about it and I really quite liked that. You know, I helped him with it. Nothing to do with taking photographs because that's nothing. I don't know anything about photographs. I'm an art person. But I helped him with like tessellating the original portraits of 1980 and making them and cutting them up into tessellated squares and then enlarging them, numbering them, then go visiting the sites and then pasting them up on walls of rundown buildings and also taking them back down. But it was like a military operation. We had folders of the images all tessellated and numbered and then we would put them up and then Roger would take the photographs and then I'd take them down. So, you know, it was really quite interesting. It was almost, well, it was reuniting the miners' images of long ago with the remnants of the industry. The rundown buildings, the mining buildings, the machinery, and the distinct valley landscape. And I really thought that was quite a romantic idea of a way of working. A celebration of the work by documentary photographer Roger Tiley will be exhibited in the Big Pit Mining Museum from this month. Oh, I remember that now. The Mining Museum had a really nice exhibition where they actually put the portraits, they had the portraits on show, and then they pasted some of the images that he'd rephotographed on corrugated industrial, corrugated steel, I think it was, corrugated metal, and in the buildings themselves. And there was a caravan there full of paste-ups of Roger's images of the strike. I really remember that. That was really good. I think it was a very popular exhibition at the time.
I live with fond memories of the people and places I've photographed for more than 4 decades. I have many stories, both happy and sad. Photography is my window into many people's lives, and I am forever indebted to those who have stood in front of my camera lens.
Miners' wages were meagre. for working underground. The dust, the mice and the cockroaches, and danger lurking all around. They went on strike for better wages, but the owners said, take it or go. They'll tell you the pits were not paying, but at Elliott's, that was not so. They broke production records over and over again, making millions and millions of pounds, but little of it went to the men. Green grass now hides the ghosts of mining, with grey hostile clouds above. Clouds that once had a silver lining, now all spent with blessings and love. But a taste of betrayal still lingers in this town with its share of the dole.